Hello everybody. Welcome back to my channel where stories and other random things take center stage and imagination is prized above all. Welcome to today's video where I will be reviewing A Court of Mist and Fury for the third time. Happy Saturday. I hope you guys are having a great morning and will continue to have a fantastic rest of your day. I've been interrupted every time I kept trying to record this video, so I'm hoping that now I can record again. So before I start, there are going to be spoilers, semi-spoilers in this video, or spoilers in general. There's going to be spoilers, and pretty big ones too. So, I will let you know when that's coming up, but if you're not up for spoilers, this is something I think you should know. So, there are going to be spoilers on A Court of Thorns and Roses, the first book which I reviewed, as well as mainly at Court of Thorns and Roses. I will link the Sarah J. Maas playlist below, by the way, if you have not watched any Sarah J. Maas content from me. So yeah. Anyway, I will be doing some spoilers on A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I will be also spoiling things from this book as well. So here we go. We're gonna start with the what is that called? The Synopsis. Feyre survived Amarantha's clutches to return to the Spring Court, but at a steep cost. Though she now has the powers of the High Fae, her heart remains human, and they can't forget the terrible deeds she performed to save Tamlin's people. Nor has Feyre forgotten her bargain with Rhysand, High Lord of the feared Night Court. As Feyre navigates its dark web of politics, passion, and dazzling power, a greater evil looms, and she might be key to stopping it, but only if she can harness her harrowing gifts, heal her fractured soul, and decide how she wishes to shape her future and the future of a world cleaved into. With more than 1 million copies sold of her beloved Throne of Glass series, Sarah J. Maas's masterful storytelling brings this second book in her seductive and action-packed series to new heights. So, I will say there is definitely there's a lot about this book I think I enjoyed. I still think my favorite book in Acotar is A Court of Silver Flames, but yeah, and I like the fact that so far in every book I read from Sarah J. Maas, there is a healing arc, and I like her healing arcs. I think they're great. Granted, I still think the best healing arcs that she has made are for the best healing arcs she has, I think, in these books are that of Aelin in Heir of Fire and Third Glass, Bryce Quenlin from House of Earth and Blood, and Nesta in A Court of Silver Flames. I think those are the best healing arcs that she has, but I do enjoy her healing arcs. But also, I think the reason I feel less for Feyre is because Feyre is not a character I find extremely complex, while Aelin and Nesta are a lot more complex. And Elaine, I think, has the possibility of being complex, but I'm not sure, because everyone around her is a lot more complex, including Rhysand, even though he seems to be like the perfect guy type character. Tamlin also seems more complex than her. Like, there are a lot of things. There are people that seem more complex than Feyre. So because of that, I think it's one of the things, like, I don't find myself like feeling as much for her as I would for other characters. And that's what brings me kind of like, okay, yeah, that brings me kind of some like, maybe, but not necessarily. So I feel like Feyre's character is not as complex as others around her and other characters she's written, but it's fine. So that's like my thought on that. So that's why her healing arc is not my favorite, but I can appreciate it and I like it, especially because it kind of fits the story, like her story and stuff like that. Although I find it interesting that a lot of her romances, a lot of Sergeant Maas's romances seem to be like you find like your mate kind of like in when you're like in your worst darkness and your worst trauma. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I kind of like it. It's a good thing. I think the main I think critique I can probably have of Rhysand and Feyre's romance comes in A Court of Wings and Ruin, but it's both a pro and a con at the same time. In it also comes in this book when she finds out that when she finds out they're mates. Spoilers. I'm walking into spoilers now, by the way. But when she finds out that they're mates, like the conflict is, of course, that she didn't tell him, but like it was barely a part of the story. You know what I mean? It was barely a part of the story that she that it just barely felt like it was there. Like you could see the romance building, and you immediately can predict the whole mating thing, but also it you know, it felt like it was barely part of the story, so it didn't feel, you know, important. That conflict didn't really feel important. I found the other conflicts of their friendship more interesting than that one. So that's something I can say. So I'm going to go into spoilers right now. Again, just a reminder. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Okay, so one of the things that was brought up to me when I was watching negative reviews of A Court of Thorns and Roses from my favorite booktuber with Cindy, which I still enjoy her negative reviews on this series because they're actually very funny to me. But basically, one of the things that was brought up is that we feel bad for Feyre and the fact that she has trauma, but we do not feel bad, but we never mentioned Tamlin, you know, feeling all that stuff. And like I can see what she means by this, and I can agree with that. We barely mentioned Tamlin and how, like, we mentioned that he's a terrible person, but we don't mention like his trauma. I can agree with that. However, I don't think his trauma can excuse any of the actions it took, but neither does it excuse Feyre's actions of not talking to him. Even though there's a possibility that Tamlin, unlike Rhysand, wouldn't talk to her, you know, it doesn't explain the fact that she didn't quite try. It doesn't excuse any of Tamlin's actions, but there is hinting in A Court of Thorns and Roses that he definitely wanted more of a submissive woman. Um, Specifically in when they were under the mountain and everything. Like she fought for him. Like she gave all her heart and fought for him and pretty much everybody else. Like she wrote their curse. And she was only expecting him to love her, right? But he never fought for her. The only time he apparently may have fought for her is to beg Rhysand uh not to, like, you know, tell him not to tell Amarantha about Rhys and I'm sorry about not Rhys, I'm sorry about Feyre. And even then it was kind of like, yeah, you said something, you know what I mean? And I just felt like in the middle of it, you know what I mean? It was fine, I guess, in the middle. That was kind of like the romance in A Court of Thorns and Roses between Tamlin and Feyre seemed great until you reached under the mountain and you saw some of his things. Like reason he sought her out was kind of to make out and have sex with her in A Court of Thorns and Roses. One of the things that piques my interest every time I reread A Court of Thorns and Roses, because yes, I have read it at least 3 times, is that in A Court of Thorns and Roses, he specifically says that when it came to the Fae and human alliance in the human war, when the humans were kind of revolting to get their land back and get their freedom in general, one of the things that he mentions is that if he could have fought for the if he was a child at the time, but that if he would have fought in the war, he would have wanted to fight in the Fae human alliance, because he wouldn't want to support tyranny. What's interesting about that is it piques my interest because in A Court of Mist and Fury, he outright becomes a tyrant, isolating Feyre pretty much from everybody and basically treating her more like a tool and stuff like that, and kind of like his trophy wife rather than anything else. And when she gets mad at him, for example, there's like an argument that they had where she explains that she's drowning and he's just pushing her head under the water. Like that is how she explains her feelings, because he doesn't even, he doesn't. It goes to the point where basically forbids her to leave the house. He doesn't let her leave the house, and there are sentries around. She's stuck in like the grounds, and using the excuse of the fact that he couldn't protect her down there, but he didn't even try to protect her, to save her in any way. Like under the mountain, he did not even try. When Rhysand definitely put his his life on the line half the time in order to help her. Even Lucian, in a way, had his life on the line to help her, but even then there was like an issue like with that. Like Lucian in this book was basically the kind of person I wanted to slap in the face. He was on my nerves. Like, your friend is suffering and you do nothing to help her. I was annoyed. I was annoyed with Lucian in this book. One of the things that he helped her kind of isolate, and basically took Tamlin's side in most of it, and saying that he'll try to help Feyre, but he barely did anything at all. Like he was just like, he basically did nothing. And it didn't help that Tamlin's old friend Ianthe basically kind of helped isolate her in a way, even though she felt comfortable with her. But it doesn't help that at the end of the day, even Ianthe kind of like just wanted influence to the point where she basically pushed Feyre down, and that didn't help. Definitely the one thing I hated definitely had to do with the whole thing about giving her gifts to make things up, and saying that he'll relax the sentries, and he started supposedly trying, but once he got what he wanted from Feyre, he kind of just stops trying, right? So one of the things that happened was that they had an argument over the fact that she helped these wraiths pay like the taxes that they owed him by giving one of them like jewelry that she basically wore maybe once, and he yelled at her over like the fact that she gave away the jewelry he gave her, and how that basically undermines him or whatever. And I was just like, Tamlin, fuck you, like you're annoying me, right? I know you have trauma, but like you're annoying me. But like basically he said that, and she's like, I know what it was like to go hungry, you know nothing about it. And she wasn't going to take the chance, you know what I mean? And even Alex explained that only like not anyone would have done it, only like a human only like a fae with a mortal heart would have given her that, and that the jewels would probably not last her and her sisters a week because of their insatiable appetites, but that the wraith will never forget Feyre's kindness. And eventually, though, Tamlin kind of like supposedly apologized, and that he'll try or whatever, and he knows he doesn't understand, and basically tried to make it up by giving her a bunch of painting supplies and stuff so that she could carry it around when she's painting in the garden. But she hasn't even been painting because of the way she's been feeling. And he seems to barely notice any of that. I think the last straw for Feyre definitely was when he locked her up in the house, which even I would have wanted to run. She was rescued there by Moore, from there by Moore and Rhys, who broke the shield. But like he locked her in the house, like she couldn't get out because she wanted to go along with him to check what's happening in the border, and he just like prevented her by basically making her a prisoner in the house. She eventually ended up going to Light Court and seeing Valaris and everything, and eventually meeting the inner circle, which would become her friends and family. And I think this is cute. One of the things that Sarah J. Maas does best is the found family trope, and I love it. I love the found family trope, especially because she makes it a big thing, and I love it. She makes it a big thing in her books. It's beautiful. And, she ends up meeting them. Amryn is like my favorite. She kind of reminded me of Aelin a little bit, with her blunt and sarcastic attitude and all that stuff. But she is basically like a 15,000-year-old creature, and I love her. More amazing. Cassian, awesome. what's it? Asriel. I love Asriel as well. Asriel is amazing. Asriel is like one of my favorites, and I'm looking forward to the book that he has. I'm looking forward to that. I like all their backstories. It's very, very interesting. By the end, like, one of the things I found that I loved a lot, what was interesting, is the meeting with Lucian after she had spent months in the night court, and she sent Tamlin a note where she said, "Don't look for me. I'm fine. I don't want to return," right? And Lucian found her and basically tried to get her to go home. And he's like, "You're not doing well. We need you at the house. Like, you don't know how like," she's like, and she started like reproaching him about, like, what was happening to me. What Tamlin was doing, and you did nothing. And like, and she's like, you don't know how hard things were the first 3 months. I had to lead by example, and I couldn't disobey him because he's my high lord or whatever. And even Lucian started making excuses for himself and for Tamlin, and I'm just like, Lucian, get out, you're pointless. The only time, the worst, interestingly, the worst thing, the most annoying part at the end is when Elaine and Nesta were basically forcefully turned into Fae because Ianthe basically sold them out and everything, because Feyre told her everything because she was in such need of a friend to talk to. And she sold them out, and they got forced into the cauldron to prove to the mortal queens, after they were trying to get them to basically ally with Prithian in order to stop Hybern from taking over. And she, like, one of the things that ended up happening is that she like, Tamlin basically allied with Hybern to declare war in order to get Feyre back, and said, and basically, when he was trying to get her to go home, it's like, Feyre, like, come here, like, as if she was to be summoned, and like, he was some form of master or whatever. Like, he really does expect more of a submissive wife, and like, he never even considered her opinion. She's like, you were not doing well. Like he treats her more like a child than anything else. And it's interesting at the end because she, because that happens, and they were forced, and then Nesta and Elaine were forced to become Fae, and the mating bond snapped into place between Lucian and Elaine, and he's like, "She's my mate," and I was just like, no. I really enjoyed how Nesta just came out of the cauldron, and she's like, and when he says things like, "She's my mate," and Nesta just came out after basically taking stuff from the cauldron, and takes Elaine away from Lucian, and she's like, "She is no such thing to you." Like, Nesta, yes, I cited, like, the thing with Nesta is that in the Court of Thorns and Roses, she basically is the bitchy sister, but in A Court of Mist and Fury, even if she is the bitchy sister, I still kind of like her a little bit more than the others, than Feyre, at least. And I like how Feyre just broke the wards, and at the end, I love how we find out that she was sworn in not as, like, consort, but as High Lady and Rhys's equal, and how she ended up going back to Spring Court basically to destroy it. So I enjoyed it. I'm a pretty big... So this is my review of A Court of Mist and Fury and my fangirling. Let me know your thoughts. So we're moving into August content. The content for August kind of is a lot of Sarah J. Maas and a reaction video and a writing update. Okay, thanks, Aylin. And a writing update. So you have like 4 more videos soon, plus my wrap up and all that stuff. But I'm super excited. So this is the last video of July. I'll see you all in August. So with my wrap up and more Sarah J. Maas content. Subscribe if you're interested in more in my content. Again, if you haven't seen anything Sarah J. Maas related, I will link it below. I'll see you soon. Turn on notifications. Until my next video, consume stories like A Court of Thorns and Roses.